Hi everyone and welcome to lesson 5 of databases. In this week's lesson you're going to be learning how to write searches for databases, and you're then going to apply these into the tasks where you'll have to become a detective in order to complete these tasks. So hopefully by the end of the lesson you'll be able to write out a search for a database and then use your problem solving skills to do manual searches on a database table. Okay, so if we start by first having a look at the documents that you're going to have open in front of you in order to complete this task. So the first one is your lesson 5 task sheet that's attached to this notification, and that's where you're going to write all of your answers down, just like every week. The second document that you'll have to have open in front of you is the lesson 5 being a detective task sheet. So it's called lesson 5 questions on this notification. That's going to have all the theory notes and the questions that you'll be able to read in order to then answer them on your actual task sheet. So the two screenshots here are the documents that you need to have open before you start with this lesson. So if you haven't done so already, you can open those up and pause this video whilst you do so. So now on your lesson 5 task sheet, you should see a space at the top to write in your starter question answers. And what I'm looking for you to do here is to write 5 pieces of information down. And you're going to complete this table. So as you can see, there's a table in front of you there with the 3 members of staff in the computing science department. These are stored in a database, and what I want you to do is have a look and see if you can identify the missing pieces of information there. So what you'll have to do is read the paragraph. So the computing science department is comprised of Mrs. Jeans, Mrs. Norman and Mr. McMahon. The most recent member of staff to join the department is Mr. McMahon, who had his first meeting on the 14th of January last year. Now with that information, I want you to complete this table. Number 1 and 2 require you to think of the data type that would be applied to the information below it. Okay, so it's for surname and the room. Remember the 5 data types from last lesson that you learned? What I want you to do is to try and think of which ones would be applicable for number 1 and 2. Number 3, 4 and 5 then are pieces of information inside the database that you'll be able to complete having another read of the paragraph at the top of this slide. So what you can do is pause this video and write your answers for number 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 on your task sheet, and then I'll go over them shortly. So if we have a look at number 1, it's the surname field. And as you can see, there's Jeans and Norman already there. So which data type would you think could be applied to this field? If you have written text, perfect, you've got it right, because all of those are letters or words, which is just text in the database. Okay, so number 1 is text. Number 2, we're looking at the room field. So as you can see below, there's B11, B4 and B9. Now some of you may have thought, because they are room numbers, I'm going to apply the number data type to that field, but you would be wrong if you've written number. The reason it's not number is because it's comprised of letters and numbers. So there, what we do in the database is just store that as text. So number 2 is text. Moving on then to number 3. Here's a title. Now, number 3, you have to fill out with the actual piece of information. And as I said, you'll find the answers in the paragraph at the top. So if you've read that, you'll know that number 3 and 4 should be Mr. and McMahon. Okay, because it's the third person in the computing science department. So number 3 is Mr. Number 4 is McMahon. And then finally, number 5, this is where we're looking for the first meeting. And remember, it's a data type date. So the first 2 have been done for you, and you'll find the answer to number 5 in that top paragraph. So I had my first meeting on the 14th of January last year. So what I'm looking for there is the 14th of January 2020. And that's your answers to the starter questions. So if you haven't done so already, get those copied into the task sheet, and then let's move on. So as I said at the start, lesson 5 is all about writing searches. Okay, now we know how to look at a database and try and interpret the data. What I'm going to do is teach you a more sophisticated way of searching for specific pieces of information. So last lesson you learned how the police can use database searching for clues in their databases to solve crimes. So looking at the whodunit lesson and also the vehicle description. Okay, so you have seen how we can search for items in databases. In this lesson, however, you're going to use your searching skills to solve some problems. What I've done is I've provided an extract of the Millwood High School student table, and it can be found in the attached document called Lesson 5 Questions.doc. Okay, so you should have it open from the start of the lesson anyway. This is the one with all the theory and stuff on it. This part of the database contains all of the information for the S1 and S2 pupils, and there's 76 records altogether. So you'll notice the first 2 pages of that document have extracts of a database table. The database table is called Student, and it has all of the student details there for the full 76 records. Okay, so make sure you've got that open before we start looking at how to write searches. So when we're talking about searching a database, when we're using the database searching software, what you actually call them is manual queries, okay? Because what you're doing is querying a database in order to pull out relevant and accurate information. So you're going to learn how to write out searches in a very specific way, and it's how searches are written in a programming language called SQL, which is short for Structured Query Language. This means that in the future you can program these sorts of queries straight into the database, and the database will report its findings at the press of a button. So once we learn how to write proper manual queries, we can then just apply that to the likes of Microsoft Access or another database tool, and it's going to then just return all relevant records to us without having to search through the table manually. Okay, so if we have a look first at how you will write out an SQL query. Here's the first example. Okay, so using those 2 tables that are in the Lesson 5 Questions document, okay, this is where the scenarios, for example, A and B come from. So the first one here, the school nurse needs a list of all of the second-year girls so that a letter regarding immunisation can be sent home. So from that paragraph or that sentence alone, you should be able to then try and think of what kind of information you want to extract from that database table with the 76 records. Okay, so the nurse needs a list of all second-year girls. So that is all I'm looking for. So as you can see here, the table has on the left-hand side the fields, table, search criteria, and sort order, and that's what we're going to use for all of our manual queries. Okay, and now all we have to do is fill in the rest. So which fields from this table do we want to pull some information from? Well, the first one is going to be the forename field, okay, because that's going to give us the first name of all second-year girls. The second then, separated by a comma and a space, is the surname, and that's going to return all the surname of the records that we pull out. Okay, so the fields that we're looking for is the forename and surname. The table that I want to find all of this information from is in the student table. Okay, so that's the title at the top of the big 76 record table. The search criteria, okay, so this is where we get a bit more specific. What exactly do I want to pull out from all of the first and surname of all the records in the student table? If I just left it blank from now on and I just had the first name and surname fields and the table from student, it's going to return all 76 records, but just give me the first and surname of the students. Okay, what I need to do now is be more specific in the search criteria. So I'm going to search for the field where the gender is equal to female, and notice that female is in quotation marks, and that's because that field would have been stored as a text data type. Okay, so if I ran the query just up till now, that would return the first and surname of all females in the student table. But I want to go a bit deeper now, so I want to say that the gender is equal to female and the year is equal to 2. Okay, now that and basically just means that we're given this query more than one search criteria. So if you remember it from last lesson, it's known as a complex query. Okay, so the gender is equal to female and the year is equal to 2. In this example, the year is obviously S1, S2, S3, S4, whatever year we're searching for. The table only holds S1 and S2 girls and boys, so the year is equal to 2. Okay, what we're then looking for here, if we were just to run this query, it's going to return the first and surname of all girls in second year. Okay, and if you look at the example A sentence at the top, that's exactly the kind of information that we're looking for. The school nurse needs a list of all of the second year girls so that a letter regarding immunisation could be sent home. So with that search criteria where all of the records must have gender female and year 2, that's going to return the information that we're looking for. Sort order then, think back to last lesson where you can either have ascending or descending. We're wanting to sort these records that we've pulled out in order of surname, starting with alphabetical first. Okay, so that's why we've done ASC, short for ascending. When we're writing our manual queries, we don't have to write the full word, we just write ASC. So the sort order, that's then going to output the data in ascending order of surname. Now, if I write that query and run it in our database software, it's then going to produce 18 records. And those 18 records are all going to be the first name and surname of all girls in second year, sorted by ascending surname. Okay, so I know it seems like quite a lot, but if you then read example A, the little sentence at the top again, that's going to make a lot more sense because it's the only information that we need to pull out from the database. So the most important things to remember here is you have to separate your fields with a comma and space. The table is always going to be student, so for all of these tasks, the table is always going to be student because we're only working with that big 76 record table. The search criteria, if you're searching for a field that has been stored as a text data type, okay, that's where you're going to put your quotation marks around the information that you're wanting to pull out. If it's a number, you don't need to put quotation marks, okay? And then the sort order, unless otherwise specified, it's always going to be ascending. Okay, so just search for surname ascending here in this one, and it's going to pull it up as surname alphabetically from A to Z. Okay, so if we have another look at a different manual query, here's example B. Now also I've put these queries into the theory task sheet that I've given you because I know that the text might appear a little blurry in the video, so it's all there for you to read as well. So example B, the casting director for the school play Barbie Girl needs to locate a suitable pupil for the lead role. She should be a tall blonde girl with blue eyes. Okay, now I know it says who could be Barbie here. That's not me asking you to then look at all 76 records. This is just the search that we would perform in order to pull out the correct or most suitable records. So for this one here, again, we're looking for the forename and surname fields, again from the student table. And the search criteria, as it specifies in example B, the little paragraph at the top, the gender must be female, so again in quotation marks, and the height must equal tall in quotation marks because that was stored as text as well. And the hair colour must equal blonde because we've asked for that in the example B paragraph. And eyes are equal to blue. Now notice that all those search criteria are obviously stored as text, the fields that we're looking for. So in gender, height, hair colour and eyes are all stored as text. So that's why we've got our quote marks around each piece of information. Note the field names are exactly the same as in the student table themselves. Okay, so as they appear on the big 76 record table, that's how we must write them in our searches. We don't need a sort order because it's just going to automatically bring them up A to Z as they appear in the table already. Okay, and what that search is going to do, if we were to run that in our database software, is going to return all eligible records for this specific scenario. Okay, so the lead role must be someone who's tall, blonde, and blue eyes, and must also be a female. So all those records that are going to be returned are going to be suitable for this. Okay, as an extension, could you maybe have a look at that table and see if you could find out who would be suitable to be Barbie in the school play. If you can, write that on your task sheet as well. Okay. So now it's time for you to write your own manual queries for the scenarios in task 18 of your task sheet. Okay, so it's the document that looks like this screenshot just here. It's the same one that you answered your starter questions on. You're going to look at the lesson 5 questions document to get the full scenario, and it's going to ask for all of the information that you need in order to write your manual query. Okay, so what you can do is look back at this video and see how the searches are made. You can also have a look on your task sheet where I've given you those 2 examples below your big 76 record table in order to help you do that. Okay, now this might take quite a while for you to complete, so you can pause the video or you can finish it off and then come back to this task before you finish the lesson. So now that you've answered all of the questions in task 18, so you've written all of your manual searches, what I would like you to do is to, again on the same document that you're writing your answers on, write out the query that will find the manufacturer and model of all the computers that have a processor speed of 3.2 GHz and cost less than £600. I also want you to sort the list with the most expensive computer first, and the table that you're going to use to write that manual query is shown on front of you just now. So it's called the computer table, and there's all of your field names at the top and then all of the data underneath. So I've given you the template for your manual search as well for the plenary, and it should be straightforward enough to write out. Okay, so that once you've written that search criteria, or sorry, that manual search, that is this lesson completely finished. Okay, so what I would like you to do is just have a double check and make sure you've written all of the searches accurately. And then the only document that I want you to submit for this lesson is the document that you've been writing all of your answers on. Okay, so just save that and submit that to Satchel 1. Remember, if you've got any questions or queries about this work, you can join your tutorial this week. But also, if you need any help whilst you're doing the tasks, just leave me a comment on Satchel 1 and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. As always, I quite like you just to be a bit reflective and have a look and see how you think you've got on this week. Okay, so if we look at the success criteria, I can write out a search for a database. If you manage to write the searches with ease for task 18, I would recommend you give yourself 5 stars. If you thought they were okay but maybe struggled with a couple, or you struggled with writing out the specific search criteria, I'd maybe give yourself 2 to 4 stars for that one. And if you really struggled with writing any of the searches, which is totally fine if you're asking for help, just give yourself 1 star so that I know what we need to work on when we're back together again. Secondly, I can use my problem solving skills to do manual searches. Okay, this is just writing out the searches, not really applicable to this lesson because we haven't been able to use them with database software, but we'll look at this when we're back in school and see if we can actually apply these to that. Okay, so that is this lesson completely finished, folks. As I say, 1 document, just your lesson 5 task sheet to be uploaded as the submission. Any questions or queries, just pop me a comment on Satchel 1 or join the S3 tutorials throughout the week. Okay, bye-bye.